Introduction to generics in .NET. So we will see what generics are. Generics is a technique introduced in around .NET Framework 2.0, which allows you to create classes where you don't have to specify the type of the internal variables or the return types of the methods, or even the type of the arguments, parameters received in the methods in that class. This allows you to defer the type declaration until you create an object of that class or you invoke a method of that class. So this means that you, with generics, you are guaranteed to have compile time verification of your types. One of the problems we had in the past, when you wanted to create collections, the most common collection that was used, it was an array list. An array list is defined in system.collections, but it has a small problem. When you create an instance of it, or actually when you add elements to this array list, what you input or you send to the add method, it is an object. So this means that you can pretty much insert anything you want there. So this means that unless I have some really well designed code to identify which type is on each position, or I do checks with type of or recent reflection, something like that. Once I do that, I do not know which type will be stored in those positions. So if I run this right now, you will see that the code will actually work. Okay. I think I was missing that one. Okay. So if now I do a quick watch, you will see that when I expand this, we'll see that the type of all the elements is object. However, they are kind of masking the real type, the declaration type of the value. So the first one is type integer because I enter a number. Second one is a string. The third one is URE or URL, and the other one is an array of integers. And I can do things like that. I can keep doing things like that. However, the most common usage we do when having lists is having lists of elements of the same type, and that's one of the best practices. So in the past, we just had to be careful with this, but there were always situations when you input some value that was not in the right type. So when you get it or try to guess it, you had an issue. Okay, that's the other issue. When you get an element from this, you actually have to guess it from object, or to convert it from object to the actual type you need to handle your operations or your code with. Okay, so that's the old way. With the new generics introduced in .NET Framework 2.0, we now have system.collections.generic, when we will have a lot of classes designed to be generic. This means that you will send the type you are going to work on them when you declare the variables. So for example, now we have list. Just to be clear, before we had the array list and the sort list. Now we have generic. We have links such as list and sort list, but you see that here in sort list and list we have these symbols, and we have here requesting T. If I go to the metadata of this class, you will see that it is public class name list, and this basically means it is expecting a type sent when you declare it. So this means that when I declare it, I have to tell it that I want a list of whatever value I want here, I want there. So I initialize it, and you will see that when I initialize it, I do have to add the type 2. And contrary to the add method of the array list, when I invoke the add method for this generic list, it will expect the actual type that was declared when declaring the variable. So, right? And if I try to input an object or something else, I will get an error, a compile time error. So it says we cannot convert from object to int, right? So that guarantees that I only input numbers or integers. And this is a compile time error instead of a runtime error, as we will get in the array list. So we'll see that here it says it can convert from string to int because the add method is expecting an integer. Cannot convert from float to int. So you see, that's the way to use the generics that have already been implemented. So if we want another list of, I don't know, let's create a custom class, public class person, which will have name, last name, surname, okay. We will create a list of persons. And you will see that when I invoke the add method, it will expect an item of that class. So now we have to send, if I try to send something that doesn't belong there, I'll get an error. It says cannot convert from int to generic example.person. Okay, so new person, no name, Sean Smith. So you see that I added the by using a generic list, I created a variable, actually many different variables with the same type, and the only thing that changed was the type you sent to the list. So that's basically the introduction to generics and to the items that have already been implemented with generics. In a video that we will have later on, we will see how we can create custom classes supporting generics so we can have type independent code created by ourselves. Thank you very much, and if it works for you and if you like it, please like it and share the video. See you next time.